Hello, everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be talking about a guide for the Demon Princes. So, as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Check out the playthrough that I'm going to be doing for the Demon Princes. I'm going to release the first episode later today, here in a few hours, and then I'm just going to keep those episodes rolling. And check out the rest of the content on the channel as well. We've got a Nurgle guide, Nurgle campaign, Ogre guide, Ogre campaign, and then I'm going to be doing a Cathay probably starting next week. And then I'm going to do a Slaanesh remastered shortly after that. So about every week, I'm going to try to do a new guide with a new faction playthrough. So be sure to check all that out, and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. There is a chance that I might start streaming during the afternoon on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Check that out. Let me know if you'd be interested in watching some of that. I don't know the exact time frame. Maybe around like 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So in terms of European time, I think that'd probably be like 5 to 8 p.m. I know that a lot of the Total War fans are European based, so it'd be nice to be able to do an afternoon stream. I can't guarantee it. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it work with my schedule, but if you have an opinion about that, just let me know in the comments. Okay, let's go ahead and get it here. So Demon Prince has a pretty difficult start position early on. But I think once you get the right build and you have the right strategy, then I think he's definitely doable. And I've got a little thing over here. I'll post this in the comments as well. People asked me to do that before. If you want to see sort of my notes for this guide, then I'll have those over there in the comments. But yeah, I'm just going to be using those just for a few talking points here, just as a reminder. So, Demon Princes, where do they stand? Why would you play them? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Well, they have very good early game power because you can get Nurglings plus Toads plus these wings in the early game. So you start off over here, and you'll want to take this place, and I'll talk about the early turns. So you'll start off here, and you're surrounded, not completely surrounded, but there's hostiles in quite a few places. You have some goblins over here. You have some scaling, you have some Nordlings here, scaling and scaling over here. But you do get access to the Toads plus the Nurglings, which is good early. You also get Nurgle healing early on, which is very good if you go the route that I'm going to talk about here in a second. You have a powerhouse mid-game with Khorne. You get some very good buffs. You get up to plus 18 versus infantry for your whole army. You get several other good buffs as well, including some armor, for some of your early game units. So they are very good in the mid game. I'd say very good late game as well. It's just their early game is kind of shaky. Talk about that in a second. They have very good town defense in the mid to late game because you can get plus 8 bonus versus infantry on all of your units in all of your towns. And their tier 2 towns have pretty good garrisons as well. So they have Warriors of Chaos, which silver shielded, pretty heavy melee defense, pretty good offense. Lots of HP, they're slow, but if you're on defense, it doesn't matter. So just really good at clogging up lanes where people are trying to invade you. Then you have these Bloodletters of Khorne that you can sprinkle in, which are very good at hacking through infantry. So, very good tower defense, or very good town defense, I should say, early on. Pretty good global value with Khorne. So, with this Bloodletting trait, you can lower your global recruitment time comfortably by 1 most of the time, and if you bring it up a little bit, you can even get it lowered by 2 if you're max rank. It's hard to get to max, and we'll talk about why later. But even at 1, just getting 1 off that global recruitment time is very handy. So you can hire basically your turn 1 units, Bloodletters and things like that, anywhere, anytime in 1 turn. So that's really nice. You have kind of mediocre econ early on. Your towns do provide some money, but not a lot. But as you commit to 1 god and you go further and further down, then you can get basically a free army with that god. You see the upkeep on all of these units is 0 once you're maxed out. The only thing that's charging me are just my Lord, the hero, and then it's a couple of these remaining Nurgle units that I haven't replaced yet. But that's very, very powerful, right? Especially, that's even when you get up to the tier 4 and tier 5 units. It'll be free on your main Lord. Not everybody, but just your main Lord. That's still going to be, 5,000 or 6,000 gold value in the late game. So that's very, very handy. And then you get reduced upkeep costs for everybody else by 25%. Okay, so let's go over the Demonic Glory and what are some of your choices and what do I think are some of the strong options and what do I recommend. So let's go over what I recommend first here. Well, first of all, I'll just talk about how it works. So you fill up these bars. It's kind of similar to Norskins, where if you win a fight or you take a town, then you devote yourself to one of the gods, and it fills up that bar. You don't burn the town, though. You just occupy the town, and it becomes an area where you can recruit from that specific god. So, for instance, these are corn towns, so I can recruit corn units, and these are all very similar in most towns. Some of them are thematically just a little bit different. So you only get 10 growth here. Nurgle gives you 20 growth with your tier 1 town. This one is whenever you have a lord present, then you get 100 gold with Nurgle. It's just if you have 5, or if you have 200 growth or 5, I forgot how they worded it, but basically like development points. So if you just progress your bar, you'll get an extra 100. So I think Nurgle does have the best gold generation as far as like just the raw towns go. And then Khorne has a pretty good garrison though. You get 2 extra Warriors of Chaos, a Bloodletter, and a Chaos Hound if you decide to get that for the control. But basically most of the towns are the same. It just dictates which kinds of units you can get at sort of which category. And I think this is similar to how they are if you play most factions. Nurgle is a little weird because it streamlines the town, so you don't have those cycling buildings anymore. So, for instance, you can get access to early Beasts of Nurgle, which are a real pain in the butt to get as Nurgle because you have to get a 10,000 gold building that's a little underwhelming compared to other options. But you can get these Beasts of Nurgle, which are really handy, and the same with, you can get these Plague Toads super early, and those are very powerful. We'll talk about that in a second. However, you can't get the Soul Grinders as early as you can with Nurgle, which is a big sad there. But most other things are either going to be a little bit better in order of how you get them, or of a similar tech level. But yeah, that's pretty much how the towns work. And in order to unlock certain units, you have to have a certain level of demonic glory. So, for example, the Spawn are locked, the Forsaken are locked. Like, these are locked right now. So even if I had a tier 3 town, which I do right now, I still could not hire any of these units except for the Rot Flies because I don't have enough demonic glory. So there's that. And then you also get items which level up, and some of them are very similar. They're kind of themed. Like, all of these tails just have slightly different stats, but they have this passive where you do extra damage whenever you're close to people. And then each lord kind of has their own themed tail. Like, this one has, armor piercing damage. This one's probably magical. Yeah, it gives you barrier hit points and things of that nature. So a lot of these are going to be themed items, but what you're really looking for are these item sets, and they give you something around the theme of the class. So this one gives you 20% replenishment for all Nurgle units. That's quite good. And then there are 2 sets early on, and then this gives you 5 melee defense for Plague Bearers and Exalted Plague Bearers, and then gives you some extra Nurgle corruption. So typically you don't complete those 3-piece sets until really late. So right here you get this Khorne one, which is 10 armor for Bloodletters and Exalted Bloodletters, which is really good. And then this one is plus 10 infantry for all units, period, in your army. From the dogs to your tier 5 units to your cavalry, your Bloodletters, your artillery, whatever it is, it all gets plus 10 versus infantry. So I think that's massive just because of how useful that is on all units in like every situation, just about, except for against ogres. So that's good. Down here with Slaanesh, you get minus 25%, which that is really strong, but we'll talk about in just a second why that's not as good as it seems late game. And then Tzeentch, I think Tzeentch is personally the most underwhelming. Like, you can do well with Tzeentch if you're very patient and you just stack a bunch of Pink Horrors or Exalted Pink Horrors, and you just get a little bit of a front line with Nurgle or like Warriors of Chaos or something. You can make Tzeentch work. I find Tzeentch very frustrating to have a bunch of the horrors because they tend to blob up a lot, and when they're blobbed up, they don't fire very efficiently. So when you're trying to raid certain towns where they've got you around, like, you have to move through the city walls, and there are these choke points, you can't comfortably fire over the walls. There are several maps that are like that, and it's just very frustrating to sort of manage that, but those are okay. Now, once you get to this level on the bar, you get something for all of your lords, period, like the entire time, even if you commit to one god. So Khorne gives you the bloodletting feature, which I'll show you here in a second. You get these switchable plagues, which I'll show you here in a second. With Slaanesh, you get the ability to seduce units, so pay some gold, move them over to your army for one fight, and then with Tzeentch, you get teleport stance, but I believe it still costs you 40 winds of magic every time you want to do it, and you don't have the technology to lower that to be free, I don't think. So that is kind of a bummer. Some of the other things that you get, like here, you get some faction-wide bonuses, extra rating, you get 5% extra replenishment, raising settlements there, post-battle loot, and 1 control, and then this gives you ambush and income from sacking. Then over here is where you get the really nice bonuses. So this one gives you +8 bonus versus infantry for all Khorne units in your entire faction. That's garrisons, any other wards that you have, your main ward, everything, particularly on garrisons. That's so useful for those bloodletters and those warriors of chaos when you're trying to defend, because most armies you're going to face throughout a lot of the game are going to be very infantry heavy, so that's super good. And you get the extra leadership for Chaos Warriors as well. And charge bonus for Fury is sort of whatever. But that bonus is massive. Now, Nurgle gives you some stuff that's good. You get a little bit of extra movement speed. You get some melee defense for Furies, which is okay. Weapon strength, but that's very limited. Again, it's not every unit in your army. It's really only Plague Bearers that get a lot of benefit out of this, of common units you're going to use. So it's it's okay. The Slaanesh one's quite good, because this is 6 melee attack and 6 defense for all Marauders of Slaanesh. So again, that's going to be great for your garrison. Also, the leadership is very good. So that one's very good. That one's A+. It's about as good as the Khorne one in my mind. Then the Tzeentch one is okay. You do get the missile strength for all horrors, so that is good if you're going for a lot of exalted horrors, which you should. So that one's pretty decent. And then once you get the bar filled all the way up, you get a bonus. Whether you commit to that god or not, you still get a big bonus. So you get Frenzy for Fleshhounds. And Minotaurs, you get 8% extra for Bloodletters, so that's really good. And then down here at Nurgle, you get extra melee defense for Plague Bearers and Exalted Plague Bearers. So if you're going a lot of Plague Bearers, the Nurgle stuff is pretty good. Slaanesh, now this is a big one, because Demonettes are very good, especially Exalted Demonettes throughout the entire campaign. But you get 7 extra melee attack there, then 10 extra charge bonus. And then Tzeentch, you get some extra missile strength for the Tzeentch unit. So that is pretty good. You do get quite a bit of missile strength for the Exalted Horrors. Or no, those are for Flamers. Okay, so Flamers are those are pretty good too. And then once you commit to a god, once you click on it, then you can no longer get any more glory from any of the other gods, and you can't get their higher level stuff. So there are, if you don't commit, then there are lines here for all of them. And Nurgle, and again, you have really nice set bonuses, and that's really what you want to look at with these, is not only the units that you're getting, but you look at the set bonuses and how strong the set bonuses are for those units. So right here, once you're fully committed, the bonus that you get for this is 30% charge bonus for Spawn, Minotaurs, Soul Grinders, Bloodthirsters, and also for Gore Beast Chariot, Blood Crushers, and Skull Crushers of Khorne. So all of kind of your beast units, except for your hounds, you get 30% charge bonus. That's really good. But the big one is this perfect vigor for Bloodletters and Exalted Bloodletters of Khorne. That is massive, because if you don't know how vigor works, basically when your units get tired, they do less melee attack, less melee defense. They're just going to be a lot less efficient in combat. So having your hardcore, infantry units have perfect vigor is going to be massive. They're just going to have so much more damage, so much more uptime. And then everyone's going to have something like this, where you get minus 25% for all of your themed units, so all your Khorne units, minus 50% recruitment, that includes global as well, plus 3 recruit rank for Khorne, and then the army ability summon from beyond. So you summon 2 of your basic, or your pretty good themed infantry units, right? So you get Bloodletters with this. With Nurgle, you get the Plague Bearers. With Slaanesh, you get Demonettes. And I think you might get blue horrors or pink horrors or something like that if you do Tzeentch. So that's pretty much symmetrical everywhere. But then once you get into these bonuses, this is where the magic starts happening. So you get minus 60% upkeep for all of your units, minus 25 recruitment costs. Now this is just for your Lord's army. So this is 75% off unit costs. And then that's a total of 85% upkeep And then with your skills, which I'll show you in a second, you get another 15. So basically, it's free units, like for your lord for that faction once you complete this set, which is near the very end of the thing. And then you have different bonuses here. So, let me see where that goes. And there are 2 sets to choose from. So this one you can either get plus 15 armor for your bloodletters and 20% spell resistance, or I can find the other one. It's the bloodthirsty one. Or you can get perfect vigor for your blood crushers, which if you're going to have the cavalry, that's incredible. So I think this one's probably better, and you get 20% extra charge bonus for your skull crushers. So that's 25 or 20% charge bonus there. Blood crushers, so, and that's 30% there. So that's 50% extra charge bonus. And then I think you get some skills that give you an even bigger charge bonus. And they already have 55. So, you know, you're going to be charging probably for like at least 80 or 90 once all these bonuses come through. Now, I will say really quickly with spell resistance and Khorne, if you don't know this, they changed spell resist for Warhammer 3, so this no longer applies to magical attacks. So the spell resist does not lower the damage from magical attacks. It's literally only spells. So the fact that Khorne, one of these gives you like 20% extra spell resist, is not going to matter in a lot of situations unless you're expecting to get hit by, you know, just a ton of magical spells or something like that. So that 20% spell resist is not as strong as it would have been in Warhammer 2. But yeah, so with Khorne, you have, you know, really good set bonus, really good sort of specialized bonus from Khorne's offering in this one are very helpful. I think that globally the +8 bonus versus infantry is better than any of these by like a mile. Maybe not Slaanesh. Slaanesh is close. But these are just like trash units early. Like Marauders, it's good for defending your garrisons. Like that's all right. But this +8 bonus, I mean, that applies to your tier 5 cavalry, right? Or your like your tier 5 demons. It's everything gets that bonus. And they have just extremely good late game units, right? Like these soul grinders, you know, they have 800 missile strength with 40 ammo, 500 weapon strength, 90 armor, and then of course you've got the Bloodthirster, which is the best solo demon at fighting people. And I don't know why this is like blocked off. That is a little weird, because I do have the 44, and it's, I don't know if you have to have a certain level lord or what to unlock that. Or maybe I have to have 3080 as well. I'm not really sure. I haven't figured that out why this is blocked off. Because I do have, unless it's just a glitch, because I have 4400 and I've had it for a while. But anyways, I digress. So anyways, very good units. My main beef with Khorne typically is I think they have a horrible economy like normal Khorne. Like, yes, you do get money for burning stuff, but it's really hard to like take over towns and manage your money properly. So they're kind of balanced around having really expensive units. It's like, okay, their units are OP, but they're very expensive. However, with the Demon Prince, they're free late game. So you can have as many soul grinders and as many of these things, as many as you want. You can have a 20,000 gold army if you want to, and it's free on your main lord. So that makes him one of the best lords in the game, just because he can leverage those units so well. Okay, so that's why I would personally go with Khorne. I think that he has the best buffs all around the place. Late game, his units are insane, and he has just really good item sets as well. However, one thing that's lacking with Khorne, which I do want to point out, is that the early game, you do not have a front line, which sucks. Like, you have these dogs, which are good. You have bloodletters, which are pretty good, but you have to wait until you get all the way up to here to get 440 in order to get these Warriors of Chaos. And you have to have a tier 2 town to make it happen, and you're not going to be able to get that early on because most of the towns you're going to be taking, which we'll talk about here in a second, are going to be ports. So, I mean, I guess you'd have to go tier 2 anyways to get these guys. But yeah, you have no tier 1 infantry that you can hire, period. It's only tier 2, and they're pretty expensive at 187 and 200 early on. So they're really poor at early game management. And that's where Nurgle comes in. And that's, I guess we'll just go ahead and emphasize a couple of the Nurgle bonuses. Why I think they're, pretty good early on. First of all, in your basic town, you can hire Nurglings. So you don't even have to have a building for it. Just straight up, it lets you hire Nurglings. They're very efficient. If you've watched my Nurgle campaign, these are extremely strong. They're probably cost for cost, pound for pound, the best tier 1 unit in the game. They effectively have 33 melee defense, 20% physical resistance. They have poison, which is basically another 15% physical resistance, so they're basically 35% resistant. And they just take forever to kill. Like, I don't know why, just things cannot kill these. They're just very, very resistant to damage. So that's an excellent front line to put in there while you flank and tear everything up. And then these toads are tier 1 as well, and these are actually quite good just to put on the front line. You can flank with them if you want, but a viewer pointed out in the past, and I've noticed this, that they are pretty effective just to have on your front line too, because of their animation where they hop and they jump on things. It knocks the enemy over, so it's almost like a charge, but when they're stationary. So they just disrupt formations a lot, and they can just kind of push their way through a crowd and allow you to get more surface area with your Nurglings. So they're just really sneaky, very disruptive fighters. And their stats are actually pretty good. So they have 7 bonus versus infantry, so basically 37 with 57 attack early on. They have the poison, they have the physical resist, pretty high melee defense, 33 melee defense early on. So I think if you think about them as just like flanking charge units, if you're trying to charge cycle, they kind of suck for that because they do hop in the middle of stuff, and they don't have a ton of weight. They have some, but they do have a hard time sort of like waddling their way out of the fight once they get in. So they're not really supposed to be used, I don't think, for charge cycling that well. You just sort of stick them in there and they just disrupt. But you can use them to run down some archers late game if you need to. But just having like 2 or 3 of those in there with some Nurglings is a really beefy, disruptive front line. It's really good. Now, if you these Plague Bearers aren't as good if you don't specialize and get all the upgrades for them, so those are kind of hit or miss. The Beasts of Nurgle are very good, but it does cost you quite a bit of Nurgle early to get them, so if you want those, that's fine, but I would probably rather just upgrade your Khorne first just to get to the Bloodletting feature ASAP to help with your growth. But I could see an argument for going Beasts of Nurgle and then switchable Plagues, which we'll talk about in a second. But after that, I wouldn't really go much more Nurgle unless you want to go a full-on Nurgle army, which I think is viable, and they are very strong. I mean, you would get all free Nurgle units too. I just feel like having a squad of, you know, Bloodthirsters and Khorne and Khorne grinders and crushers and things like that might be better than having a Nurgle squad of you know, great unclean ones and things like that. But Nurgle is really, really strong. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with Nurgle. So maybe that's correct, but I think just as far as raw numbers on the units late game, Khorne just has the best tier 5 units. Nurgle is good, but the power of Nurgle is really their debuffs, and with Nurgle proper, it's their plagues that make them really strong, and you don't have the same kind of power with the demonic Nurgle, so that's okay. Slaanesh does have a lot of good bonuses. If you like hit and run, they are really strong. I think the Exalted Demonettes are fantastic early on, and then you do get some bonuses for the Demonettes over here. They also get Perfect Vigor. I believe it's either the Demonettes or one of the Cavalry gets Perfect. It might be the Heartseekers that get Perfect Vigor, but they do get a bonus to I think it's like 10 for their armor piercing damage. I didn't think about them taking off these other bars here when I started shooting this, but anyways, Slaanesh is pretty good. Slaanesh is pretty good. So if you want to do like, I still think Nurgle base is the best thing you can possibly do for like early game, and then splash somebody else. So you could do Slaanesh instead of Khorne if you want to. I think this is not as good as the Bloodletting feature, and their bonuses aren't quite as good, and their late game units aren't quite as good. Like they are, like they can flank, they have a lot of power, but they just don't have the armor or just like the sticking power for sieges. I don't know. They're good. They're still pretty good, but I think that Khorne might be a little bit better, especially with like this Bloodletting feature. And then Tzeentch, like I said, is not really my cup of tea. They're okay. I think they're like the Forsaken are all right. If you give them Nurgle for a front line early on, you know, they can be good. It's just, it takes them a while to come online. The Pink Horrors are good, but you don't want a lot of those probably, or it's just really hard to micro them without getting clumped up. The Flamers are good. Like they've got some good stuff, and we're gonna do a Tzeentch campaign, but I just feel like they're going to be a little lackluster compared to the other three, in my opinion. So I think you definitely want Nurgle early. You can just go Nurgle all the way if you want, and then pick either Khorne or Slaanesh. I think Khorne is probably a little bit stronger, just because that bloodletting, but Slaanesh is pretty good too. But it's up to you. I think the town defense for Khorne, like I said before, is also really, really good late game. Okay. And then as far as the skills that you want to go with your Lord, point that out here. So early on, I would just go Impure Prayer to start, and then Rotting Nourishment. Now that's 6% casualty replenishment for your whole army, not just Nurgle, everything. So you can do the Plague Troopers if you want, but since we're going to be, with this build, we're going to be moving away from Nurgle in the mid to late game, then I would rather just keep something that's good for everybody. Noxious Abilities, and then Toxic Resolves. That's 15% upkeep reduction. Now, you can also spend 1 extra point on this if your Lord gets hurt, which is really handy. 30% replenishment for your Lord. That's fantastic. You can use him to face tank a lot of armies. And then after that, I would start going for Khorne. So Khorne here, and then +8 for the Bloodletters, Exalted Bloodletters, and Chaos Warriors. Really strong. Endless March for the discount. And then after that, get these Bloodthirsty Beasts. Now, you do want this pretty early. So you want to try to get up to this fast, because those Flesh Hounds are extremely powerful. We'll talk about the units in a second. But those Flesh Hounds are really, really good. And it scales very well into Minotaurs, Spawn, a lot of good things. So you want to get those Bloodthirsty Beasts. And then after that, you don't really want to go much deeper than that early. This is for just your late game units, your Bloodthirsters and your Soul Grinders. So that's like okay. But you're not going to be seeing those till tier 5. So then I would switch over and go over here, get this Respect the North, just so you can try to get some peace treaties, get some non-aggression packs up top, Root Marcher, and then Lightning Strike. And I would get that 3rd point. I kind of greeted out not getting it, because when you start a Lightning Strike battle now in Warhammer 3, you start off, I think, exhausted, so it's really bad in a fight, but sometimes you need it, because as you can see with this Ogre Town here, like, I'm probably going to be able to win this, but this is pretty troll. Like, they've got a lot of units, like, you know, almost 50 units here, and so I really, really wish I had that 1 point of Lightning Strike at this point. So even if I was exhausted, I could still take them one at a time. So that's going to be a heck of a fight. Be sure to watch the campaign to see how that goes. But yeah, that's how I would go on him early on. And then just normal lords, I would probably get the Herald of Khorne. You can do the Herald of Nurgle as well if you're not going to be able to get enough of the Nurgle Wizards. Oh, Nurgle Wizard requires you get your first one on the house when you make your first Nurgle building. We'll talk about that in a second when I talk about the first early turns. But after that, you have to have a tier 3 building in order to unlock additional ones. So if you don't want to make extra Nurgle tier 3 buildings, again, your first town, you can make a tier 3. So you kind of get your first 2 at a relatively low opportunity cost, but your 3rd one and beyond, it can be really annoying to have to build up a town. So you could do just a Herald of Nurgle and just go blue tree and then go the solo tree on that and just turn him into a tank. And that's probably fine. But I think that you should probably try to go for the Herald of Khorne, just because you do get some upgrades to some key units. So if you do Skull Takers, you can get Bloodletters, Exalted Bloodletters, Blood Crushers. Good bonuses there, both on your early game units and your late game cavalry. And you can also get these bonuses here, which are good for your Chaos Warriors and Skull Crushers. And then these Harbingers of Death are pretty good too for like your really late game units. Just all your beast units get a little stronger. They do have a really good blue tree though too. You can get this Blood Feast for the extra replenishment. It does stack with the replenishment from your, well, actually they wouldn't stack, so that's off of 2 different lords. But it stacks with other replenishment that you have. You do have Unholy Resilience, great for tanking. You got Lightning Strike down there, just mentioned that, and then you get the discount, the -9% here and the 6% here. So that's 15% discounted there, and then you get the global 25%. As well, so it'd be 40% discount on all of your units, which very, very good. And then as far as up here, I would just go with the +40 melee every time. You can do Locus of Fury, which is good for charging, but just get this, it's just more consistent in combat, and then that's just trash. You don't want that most of the time, unless you're trying to do something really cute like cast this and then cast some like crazy vortex spell on your own army and have them not get hurt, or you could find something cute to do with this probably, but I would probably just go Locus of Wrath. Okay, but Thirsty Beast, Glorious Lightning Strike. Okay, we got that covered. Now, another thing as far as like why I recommend Nurgle early is there are a couple of items that are really good. So these first wings are incredibly powerful because you get Pestilent Decay. I wore these all the way up until I got the set bonus near the end of Khorne. It's 16 to 32 damage in a 35-meter radius for everybody as long as you're in combat permanently with no magic cost. It's incredible. It's like a Mortis engine. You get this basically after the first fight. It's nuts. It's really OP in the early game. So you want that. And then if you pair that together with the tail that you get really early on here, that's an additional 10 to 20 AoE. So you're looking at 16 to 42 or 26 to 42 damage, like permanently every second to everybody in melee. Now this is only 10 range, but the other one's 35 range. So the other one can hit 2 or 3 units. This one's only going to hit your first unit, but that is a lot of damage. I mean, you'll see your Lord racking up hundreds and hundreds of kills just off of this a lot of the time. So that's incredibly powerful. And then I think like Slime Trail is really good. You get that early on too, which is -5 melee attack, and then you get armor and health. So it's just really nice for kind of tanking in the early game as Nurgle. And then like I said, you get the Toads, you get the Nurglings, you get a pretty good town. But one of the big deals also is you get magic, and you need to pick some magic users because Khorne just has no magic users organically. So unless you just don't want to use magic in the game, you need to pick somebody. So it needs to be either Tzeentch, Slaanesh, or Nurgle. And I think Nurgle has the best magic because it's healing. That AoE healing is huge, especially late game if you have heavily armored stuff. Your Lord, Blood Crushers, Soul Grinders, Bloodthirsters, Warriors of Chaos. You have a lot of heavily armored, high HP units, and that makes your effective health a lot better when you do that. So I think the healing is huge. Now, again, you could get like Shadow Magic or something, which is pretty good too, like lowering melee defense and things of that nature, but I just think Nurgle's just the place to be. Also, Stream of Corruption is really good in the early game. Their wind spell is super cheap. It's like 4 or 5, it might be 6 magic, but does really good AoE damage and applies poison for 10 seconds. That basically reduces the damage the enemy's going to be doing to you. So Stream of Corruption's awesome. Late game, Fleshy Abundance is really good. So that's what you really want. And then he's got this Locus of Fecundity too, which also gives you a lot more healing. And you can put him on a Rotfly later, which allows you to position really well, just to make sure you're getting off some of these AoE spells really well. So, anyways, I think he's great. You can turn him into a tank too if you want to, sort of. Like you can get this Pelican if you need a frontliner and give him, some extra armor. But I think he's the best spellcaster in a vacuum without the faction bonuses and things like that. I know Tzeentch, with all their bonuses to magic and stuff, like they can have really good casters too, but just with this guy, I think Nurgle's probably the best. Okay, and then mention all that. So yeah, units. So we'll talk about what you should do in the early turns and which units I recommend specializing in. How are we looking on time? Oh, we're good. Okay. Okay, so like I said, you're going to start out here. You attack, you win your first battle. I would recommend just manually fighting that, because if you auto-resolve it, your dogs are going to be really hurt early. Take the town, declare it for something that has magic. Again, I like Nurgle. And if you do Nurgle, then create the Toad, hire 2 Nurglings as soon as you take the town. That'll give you your Plague-Ridden. Walk down to like here, just right on the border, right next to this. Put the Plague-Ridden in there, hire 2 Toads, go down here, take this, manually fight it, should be pretty simple, and then, hire a couple of Nurglings, and then depending on how confident you are and like what's going on, you can either dash, which I think is what I did, and then go for this the next turn, or you can stop on the border, hire a couple more units, and then it'll take you 2 turns to get there. But time is of the essence. Every turn matters because these guys down south are just going to be sending just floods of garbage at you constantly. So you need to try to get these ports early before the big armies start coming in here. So come over here, Nurglings, dash, fight this. Depending on where their army is, might be a tricky fight, maybe not. Take it. Go for more Nurglings here. Maybe one, I think I did one Toad, one Nurgling. Come over here. You know, probably walk over here for this one. If you're confident they're not there, you can dash. If you're a little scared, you can come over and either channeling stance for magic or ambush. And then this is the one that can sometimes get kind of hard depending on where they put their army. If they have like a 15 stack part in here, you're going to have some pretty good combat. I think you can get it done, but if you're scared of that, then you probably just have to fall back and just try to deal with these armies. But hopefully you'll be able to win this. And then once you get that, you get the province under control. You can do the Revered Nurgle, and this will give you some extra growth to get to, you know, tier 2, so that you can get the dogs. Or if you need like public order, you can do that one. The corn one is pretty nice because it does give you extra recruitment capacity, which is pretty handy. But after you get this, then you want to upgrade, preferably this town because it's the safest one, usually. Upgrade this town to tier 2, and then you want to get the dog building. I don't think I have any of those right now, but over here. You want to get this, because these are amazing. You really, really want these early, but you can't get them because every town you're going to take is a port. So you can't get them tier 1 unless you make your first town corn, which I think is a big mistake because then you're not going to have any magic. So they're good, but I think it's worth delaying them in order to get magic. But once you get these, get a lot of these. Get like 4 or 5 of these things. They're unreal. They're very, very powerful. You have nice upgrades for them early, which I talked about in the tech tree. You're going to get the bonuses versus infantry. They have 20% physical resist. 65 base damage is nuts for a unit that's this fast and this cheap early on. That's just like an insane amount of damage. They have 46 charge bonus base. And then 38 melee attack, magical damage, they cut through physical resist, 26 melee defense, 30 armor. These things are just a house. They're very, very strong. They're very fast. They're just incredible. They have Vanguard, so these will easily just completely melt any ranged units, including those stupid Marauder Horsemen with the axes, archers, and then you can actually just, if you charge them into the back of, you know, spearmen or swordsmen, whatever, infantry line, they'll just melt people. So I've won so many battles just off the back of having 5 or 6 of these dogs. They're just absolutely nuts early. They're like the best cavalry in the game at tier 2. You can actually get them at tier 1 with him. So yeah, just incredibly powerful early game units. You definitely want to get a lot of these. It's really sad. This takes 2 turns to hire, so I haven't even gotten one because it's just, I cannot believe it's 2 turns to hire that, but for some reason it is. The Bloodletters and Chaos Warriors are both pretty good. Early game Bloodletters are your super high DPS. And then your Chaos Warriors are like, okay. These are basically like Nurgling replacements once you get the huge discount where you pretty much, they're free, you replace them. But before that, if you do get some Bloodletters, or if you do have the option, I would probably go Bloodletters sprinkled in with Nurglings and just get a few Bloodletters for the damage. Just because they're going to give you a lot more bang for your buck in terms of offense. And then, like I said before, do not skimp on these halberds. You have to have those versus ogres. I have not fought ogres yet. I've been sort of running from them in the other campaign, desperately trying to get halberds, but a lot of your units are anti-infantry, and ogres like have almost no infantry other than the little nobblers, which don't matter. So you really, really need to make sure you have these halberds ready to go. So don't skimp on it. Don't be too cheap. Make sure you're getting some of these somewhere. Then other tier 3 units. I haven't tried the Skull Cannon yet. It's probably pretty cool. Gorby's Chariot, hit or miss. It does have a lot of weight, so maybe it can sort of be kind of like your Toads later on, where it can just kind of push stuff around a little bit. And does some decent damage. These spawn are handy because they actually have Siege Attacker. I don't think anything else, like your Skull Cannon I guess has Siege Attacker too, but you're kind of light on the Siege Attackers early. So those spawn can do that. And then, of course, the Exalted Bloodletters are really good. Just basically better all-around Bloodletters. And then once they kill 80 units, then they get these extra bonuses. So pretty strong units overall. And this is what I was talking about earlier, where you have to get up to tier 3 to get the +1 for the Plague Ridden for your wizards. And then you have that down at the bottom. When your growth per turn is 200 or more, then you get extra gold. Or when you have 5 development points, whatever that is. So, anyways, that's pretty handy. But your garrison here is not as good. If you decide to get one of these, you get 4 units with Khorne, and I think they're stronger. So I think the garrison with Khorne is actually bigger. I will say your town defense is not quite as good as Nurgle or some of the other ones, because it takes to tier 3 before you get cannon towers. Now, their cannon towers are quite good. It's like these homing missile, these purple balls of death that just kind of zoom in. It's almost like what fired out of the Hell Cannons for the Warriors of Chaos. So it's good, but it's like 1,400 supplies to make them, right? Versus Nurgle can get cannons for 500, right? So their towers are pretty weak. It's just basically archer towers early on when you're defending towns. So that does kind of suck. But that's for every undivided faction. So it doesn't matter if you pick Nurgle or Khorne or whatever, the towers are the same, and they're kind of bad compared to some of the other factions. But again, if you have the Chaos Warriors and the Bloodletters, they can definitely put in some work, particularly if you have that plus versus infantry. So even these guys right here, can't show you, but like everything has that +8 versus infantry, which does help out quite a bit. The switchable plagues also, I meant to show you that, and why I think they're really good. First of all, you need to get to the Plague Ridden anyways on your demonic tree, so you're already gonna, so that you can hire more wizards, which is right here. So you're already very close to being able to get this switchable plague. It's just basically like 1 or 2 battles, just devote it over to Nurgle and you got it. You get a lot from like quests too. But you have the option of these 4 plagues. Now, on the surface, these are not as strong as standard Nurgle plagues. It doesn't cost you anything. You have it on constantly. It's a little underwhelming, but there's some okay stuff. So this is the one that I usually run, Grey Fever. You get Vanguard deployment for everything, which is good, because some of your units are going to be pretty slow. And then if the enemy contracts it, then it's -6 melee defense and -10% speed, so that's okay. This one's alright. If the enemy gets it, it's -20% replenishment, so they can't replenish, basically. Sort of whatever. Leadership is whatever. But this one is nice. Like, you cause terror for everybody in your army, which is very handy. You know, especially low leadership stuff, it's going to make them break. But then, if the enemy gets it, -100% charge bonus. They no longer have a charge on anything. So that's actually quite good. And I got this on one of these, at least one of these Ogre armies here, has that. So -100%. So if you look at these guys, now I don't know why they still have 7. Maybe there's a cap on it, I don't know. But 7 charge bonus on this Ogre. 6. Nobblers have 1. So no charge on any units, which is big. Because Ogres, like, that's a huge part of who they are. Is like, they weigh a lot. They even have their own special charge where they do extra bonus damage even when people are braced. So a lot of their powers and their charge bonus, because they just, as a faction, they don't usually have super high melee defense or super high armor, so they rely quite a bit on that charge. So if you take away that charge bonus, that's big. Or if the enemy, you know, is sporting like a bunch of bears, or, you know, just anything else that's going to rely on charge. Slanesh, you get one of those on a Slanesh army, that's going to crush them. So situationally, it is pretty good. But even just the permanent Vanguard or Terror situationally can be quite good. Okay. So anyways, take over early, go for these 3 ports, just kind of get as many Nurglings as you can, try to get to Hounds. As soon as you get Hounds, you know, get like 5 or 6 Hounds. I would get rid of a lot of your early units. I keep them until you get to the big fight, but then after that, you can let them go. So I would get rid of the Blue Horrors, keep the Pinks, get rid of the small dogs eventually. It's up to you whether you want to get rid of the Wasps or not. I kept them around just because I got the 15% discount on them with Nurgle, that Nurgle skill early. But they are a little frustrating as well, but just having some flying unit is helpful early on. They do have a lot of armor-piercing damage. And then after you get that, try to diplomatically Get a non-aggression with Greyling and these guys, and that will pretty much cover your western flank pretty well. And then that kind of frees you up to either go southeast or south. And typically you can do that once you kill scaling, because they both hate scaling, so that'll help you out a lot. See if you can get... ignore these goblins up here, first of all. They don't do anything. They can't really siege you. They just pretty much suck. And I've seen a lot of other content creators go up and try to take this town, which is at war with you early. But it's a bad idea because, first of all, Greyling owns the rest of this property, and you have to run really far out of your way if you want to try to take out Greyling. And that's going to open you up to this aggression from the Southerners, which is really bad. Because this is the main threat early, is it's the elves and the Nordland that comes floating up through this river. So you just need to just get rid of as many enemies as possible. So try to make some friends up here so you can focus your efforts on the south. So ignore the goblins, they don't matter. Also, Greyling's going to go over there and fight them anyways, so there's a good chance they don't even come for you early. You got some Skaven in here. Try to befriend the Skaven if you can early on. Just limit your enemies. This dude over here is at war with you too, Sarl. I think starts over here or something. He usually doesn't come for quite a while, so just kind of ignore him. And then what I would do is, after the first wave of invasions over here, you can take out this if you want, the Sarl base of operations. Then after that, they're pretty far away. They have to go through Skaven, who's also at war with them typically early on. So they're way over here. So if you can take this out, that'll slow them down. Then after that, after you manage to beat the elves, and now sometimes Kislev comes over here, sometimes they don't. But after you kind of stop these aggressors, I would go south, and just land over here, and then you can either go for Nordland. You could just try to go for a Nordland town if you want, but I think the easiest thing is just pop in right here, just go right here, start running down here, and then I would try to go for, if you kill the elf army and they don't have anything, you can go for them. Once you get flesh hounds, that becomes a lot more viable. But before you have flesh hounds, they're pretty hard to deal with. In the early game, the toads are a bit slow, and their archers will definitely light you up. But if you can, so it's going to be difficult to siege them, in other words. But if you can kill their army open field, go ahead and knock them out. And then come down here, just go for Marienburg, and just try to establish, this is your main sort of area. You don't get the special Marienburg port, which kind of sucks, like a lot of factions get. This is typically a relatively secure base of operations. You do have the ogres, depending on how often they aggro with you, but you get this nice little corner of the map. This is going to be when about the rifts open, so you want to close those rifts. Alternatively, if you get stuck up here, or you just want to try to fight the Skaven or something, and, take this province, you can try to take this area out as well, and then just take a rift down to Empire. This kind of depends on how it plays out, but I ended up just coming down here, going up the beach. There were some tough fights, but going through there, taking this area out, and just being ready to deal with the ogres if they come for you. The Empire is pretty easy. I mean, if they have vastly superior numbers, it can be rough, but typically it's very doable. Kislev is tricky. They tend to get a lot of confederations that are pretty strong early, but your garrisons are good. They basically had 40 that attacked this town, and they only had 9 left or something after it. So yeah, they took this off of me, but we're going to be able to hold them at the other towns. So anyways, that's what I recommend early on. There are some other ways you can do it, but I would not go into the Demon Realms. I know everybody's been complaining about that. Just don't do it, or mod them out if you want to. That's my opinion on it. I'll make a separate video about that maybe, but I mean, yeah, it's not a great feature. No one does it, but you know what? No one did the Vortex campaign either. Most of the time, right? And then Warhammer 1 just didn't have anything like that, period. It just wasn't a feature. It's you can just, there's a mod, there are already mods out there. Just get a mod that gets rid of the Demon Realms and just pretend that it's Warhammer 1, right? And it's just, conquer everything. But I've never gone to the Demon Realms in any of my campaigns. I've had a lot of fun. Doesn't matter to me. Is it annoying to have to close a rift every now and then? Sure. But again, you can mod it out if that's what you want to do. It's not a deal breaker for me. But yes, would I like Immortal Empires with all the other factions and bigger map? Sure, of course. Obviously. That's what I'm going to be playing every time when that comes out. But I still think the game is good as is. But I don't want to get too sidetracked on that. I think that's basically it. Try to secure Marienburg. I think if I've got anything else, I think that pretty much covers this. Hopefully that sets you up. Just quick recap. You know, start off. Take the first town. Nurgle, Plague Ridden, Nurglings, Toads. Down here, get all these ports. Get to tier 2. Get your hounds ASAP. Beat all these clowns early. Run down here. Once you have 5 or 6 hounds, start terrorizing this area. Try to set this up as your main Khorne base of operations. Because remember, you can't, because this is a Nurgle town, your capital, you can't get to tier 4 or tier 5 units here that are Khorne. So you need another capital to do that, and I think Marienburg's a really good one. Alternatively, like I said, if you take the Rivs, you could go down here and make Altdorf. If you can get a good swing at Altdorf, that's a nice town as well. And then just as you go up in Khorne, by turn, if you're being aggressive, by turn 40 to 45 or so, you can completely fill up your Khorne bar, and just kind of go powerhouse with everybody. Now, I will say, as far as the Undivided, it's a little underwhelming to me. Like, you don't have good set bonuses at the end. You don't get any units as you level it up. And you have to have a separate town for each tier 5 that you want to hire. So, like, it sounds appealing. You can summon all the demons, but you have to have a tier 5 for each town. So if you want tier 5 Slaanesh demons and tier 5 Khorne, you have to have a tier 5 town of each of those, which takes a long time to set up. And there's a lot of redundancy. You know, like, with Khorne, you already have heavily armored, superior, like, cavalry superiority type of units. You have monstrous anti-large units. You've got soul grinders. I don't know. You've got most of your bases covered late game as Khorne. I mean, maybe not like super magical units like Zeech or something, but I don't know. You can try it if you want. I think it is probably a much less efficient campaign if you want to go Undivided. I wish it got some buffs. The big one, again, is you just don't get the set bonuses. You don't get the full, like, 100% free army with the crazy, like, you know, bonuses to bloodletters and bonuses to infantry and all that stuff. You just don't have it. So you get a lot of versatility, but I just don't think it's worth, if you're trying to be as efficient as possible, I don't think it's worth losing out on all the bonuses. So you don't get any of these checkpoints up here, right? Like, you don't get the bonus versus infantry or extra, like, these things. So I don't know. But anyways, that's going to be it. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did. Check out the campaign. Like I said, I'm going to release an episode every day starting later today. So I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day.